The Started by the College Football Show. Wherever or however you're listening, we're so grateful to have you here with us. As you guys know, I'm your host, Sean Cottle, and we have some very interesting storylines that we're going to be covering today, guys. One of those storylines, unfortunately, is not coming as a surprise to me and many of the other viewers and listeners of this show. And that storyline being Notre Dame's upset loss against Northern Illinois from this past weekend. So we're going to be covering that game, guys, as well as Alabama's victory over South Florida and whether there's some cause for concern down in Tuscaloosa. We're going to be covering all of that and then some, guys. But before we get started, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well, so you guys can stay up to date on all of our latest content that we post daily. And if you would like to support our network and our company, you can do so by following the link in the ticker below. It's streamelements.com/StartedBodyShow/tip. And if you'd like to gain exclusive content from Started Body, be sure to follow us on patreon.com. You can do so by going to patreon.com, clicking on the search bar, and typing in Started Body Show. That way you can gain exclusive content that we post daily. So with that being said, guys, let's go and get right into it, shall we? Like I said, this might be news that is surprising to some, but to us over at Started Bother You is not surprising at all. Something I always talk about ad nauseum is how Notre Dame is constantly ranked much higher than it should be in the start of the season. And when that happens, unrealistic expectations are thrusted upon Notre Dame. And this year is no different. They were ranked in the top 5 going into the season. Top 10, my apologies. Ranked in the top 10 going into the season. They beat Texas A&M on the road last week in week 1 to kick off the year. By the way, this a Texas A&M team that is not very good. Not very good at all. We ranked Texas A&M much higher than they should have been. So Notre Dame defeats Texas A&M on the road. They come into this week against Northern Illinois, a team that many would be considered a easy victory for Notre Dame. However, the same issues that plagued Notre Dame in their loss against Northern Illinois are the same issues that have plagued Notre Dame, not just from last season, but quite frankly throughout the entire Marcus Freeman era over at Notre Dame. An inability to execute offensively, an inability to be explosive offensively, and poor quarterback play. And I'm not blaming it entirely on Marcus Freeman, because it is difficult to be successful as a head coach at any level of football without proficient and at the least efficient quarterback play. So I understand that there are some issues that Marcus Freeman is dealing with at Notre Dame. However, there have been a plethora of opportunities for Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, to go in the transfer portal and pick up, legitimate quarterbacks in the portal. However, Notre Dame has not been able to do that. They have shown an inability to be successful and, quite frankly, to play up to par against teams that are ranked in the top 25, and we see it happens all the time. Whenever they play against good opponents, they fall short. And I believe that the AP poll and the CFP committee is actually doing a disservice to Notre Dame when they rank them so high at the beginning of the year, because they place unrealistic expectations on Notre Dame and the fan base at Notre Dame. So now fans are watching Notre Dame, and they're thinking to themselves, okay, Notre Dame is a top 10 team. Notre Dame is possibly a top 5 team. And then they go and lose to Northern Illinois. And this happens. And now you have people calling for Marcus Freeman's job. They're calling for a change at quarterback. All of these brash decisions that are being made off of unrealistic expectations. Notre Dame was never a top 5 team in the country. Notre Dame was never a top 10 team in the country. Notre Dame was never a top 25 team in the country. However, because people see that number 5 next to their name, they get an unrealistic sense of what Notre Dame actually is. And the only reason that Notre Dame gets that type of recognition, that type of preseason accolade, is because it's Notre Dame. If this was any other program that had the same exact coaching staff, the same exact players, the same exact play style, they would not be a top 5 team in the preseason poll. And Notre Dame's success is only based off their success in its past. What has Notre Dame done in the past 4 or 5 years to garner them the credibility of being ranked so high to begin the season? Legitimately. I'll wait. Because personally, I can't think of anything. And when stuff like this happens, coaches are the first to get blamed. And as you guys know, the viewers of this program, I'll never call for a coach's job. I'll never call for a coach to be fired. But what I will do is keep coaches accountable and start to question the serviceability of certain coaches. Is this the right coach for the job? I'll never say someone needs to get fired. But what I will question is whether Marcus Freeman is the right coach for Notre Dame. I believe that's a fair and valid question based off the data, based off what we've seen so far from his tenure at Notre Dame. What remains to be seen for Notre Dame moving forward from this? We will have to wait and see, but it's unfortunate because this is not a surprise to me. This is not a surprise to me that on a Tuesday afternoon, this is our biggest storyline coming out of college football. And that's unfortunate. That is unfortunate. What does that say to the landscape of college football? What does that say about Notre Dame in itself? Eventually, you can no longer rest upon your laurels. You can no longer rest upon your namesake. You have to do something productive in the now, in the present. And that's on you, Notre Dame. But before this segment ends, I do want to give a huge shout out, a huge congratulatory to Thomas Hammock, the head coach over at NIU, who actually was the former running backs coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and the running backs coach and offensive coordinator for the college that I went to school at actually set in on a symposium, on a lecture in which Thomas Hammock was speaking at. And this running backs coach and offensive coordinator was someone who I had a great relationship with. And he talked, this was a couple of years ago, but he talked about how great of a coach Thomas Hammock was and how he would be having a head coaching position sometime in the near future. And lo and behold, he was right. Thomas Hammock is now coach of Northern Illinois, who just pulled off so far the biggest upset of the year. So huge shout out to Thomas Hammock. But with that being said, guys, in our next segment, we are going to be discussing another team that is perhaps having some question marks next to their name. So be sure to stick around for that, guys. You're not going to miss it. We'll be right back.